For staying up later, and this, my friends, would be night number 3 of a full week, 4-night run of Mel Brooks on Later. At this point, the clothing we're wearing has gotten incredibly rank. The studio is clearing, but we have to proceed. The producers. You had hung around for a while, I guess, since a successful run on television. In between that time and when you put the producers together in the late 1960s, there's kind of a fallow period for you, right?
No. Yes. No.
Which is it?
Yes. It's yes. It was fallow, but not completely fallow, because there was a little follow in it. Now, follow in the fallow was we followed a guy called Danny Melnick, because he used to have a hole in his pocket and change would drop out, so we followed this guy. And he was a partner with and to David Susskind, whom you keep referring to during your Costas late at night Michigas here. Michigas. That's Yiddish for the state of Michigan. People often confuse that. So Danny Melnick said, Mel, I said, yes. What do you want? He said, we want an idea. We want a show. David and I want a show, and we want you to write it. I said, okay, what do you want? We said, we want to do a takeoff of the CIA. At the time, there was a serious kind of one-on-hour one on with Robert Vaughn and, you know, and his partner Elliot Karakin, remember?
Yes.
So we want to make fun of that kind of thing. I said, okay. And very soon, Get Smart was born, written by Mel Brooks and Buck Henry. My agents talked me into a stupid thing, or didn't talk me into it, they did it, called Mel Brooks with Buck Henry. To this day, Buck hates my guts because it's not and, it's with. And I feel so terrible. Buck, give me I love you. You're very talented. I've always adored you. You know that. I've tried to kiss you a couple of times in the locker room. But I know it was terrible, the with. But anyway, we wrote it together. We had a good time. We shot pool. There was a pool table up at Talent Associates, which owned and produced Get Smart. So Get Smart freed me from the tyranny of having to do like the Victor Borge special, you know, and the Andrews sisters on the road or whatever. I don't know. There was a lot of stuff going on that I didn't want to be part of, but I had to make a living, you know. There was always an Andy Williams show that you could write secretly for, you
Mitzi
know.
Gaynor usually had a special every now and then.
And I didn't want my agent to call me and say, Mitzi Gaynor needs a big joke, you know? Because she just wasn't Sid Caesar, let's face it. Anyway, even I laughed at it. So Get Smart came along, and it was a hit, and paid the rent for a while. I was able to marry Ann. I was able to write the producers on the side.
So Ann wouldn't marry you until you had those residual checks in hand. Is that what you're trying to say?
As a matter of fact, I was living in her apartment. First I started by keeping a pair of black and white shoes there. Then I kept underwear. That she insisted on. Then I would leave a tie and a sweater, and finally I was there. You know, I moved everything. My mother used to give me a sponge cake once a month. I'd move the sponge cake in there. Sponge cake is very good when it gets old because it can support a building. It's very... when sponge cake gets dry, it's like a cement. It's better than cement because there's a little give and a lot of support. Anyway, so, and she lived in a private house, you know, well, a brownstone on 12th Street when I moved in. And the sponge cake really kept it, you know, level.
Well, she was Mrs. Robinson by then, right?
No. No, she was Mrs. Robinson when I had done the producer. Yeah, we did the producer. You're right. The producer. Yes, no, no, yes, yeah. Yeah, 65, 66. But we met in 61. She was doing the Perry Como show. She was singing, and Buddy Strauss, Charles Strauss, he doesn't like to be called Buddy, who wrote Bye Bye Birdie, wrote the music, Lee Adams wrote the lyrics, and I wrote the book, the story, for a musical called All American starring Ray Bolger. We're in the middle of writing it. During the interim, or mitten derinnen, which is the Yiddish word for Mediterranean, he was also playing piano for Anne Bancroft at the Actors Studio. She was doing I guess, My Fair Lady, and he was helping her. And he took me to say hello to her. She was at the Perry Como show, fell in love, and I've loved her ever since. That was February 5th, 1961. We are married now 27 years, lived together for a little while before then. But I wasn't able to marry her because I didn't want to live on her money. It wasn't enough. I just wasn't making that kind of money, you know? I was thinking of living at the time with Dick Shawn because he was making money. He was doing a $3 grand a week. I said, is it Ann, is it Dick? Is it Ann, is it Dick? Is it Ann, it's Dick, it's Ann. You know? And so finally I decided. Dick Shawn was too crazy. Besides, he ended up in the producers, by the way. I mean, you know that.
Yes, which brings us full circle.
Yes.
To the producers.
To the producers. Springtime. The guy that sang that in the movie, Arthur Rubin, is now a big manager on Broadway. And then he was just an out-of-work tenor, you know? And he auditioned. You know, in the Hitler scene when they were all auditioning,
right.
You see him in person when he says, a wandering minstrel, a thing of stop, cut, you know. He says, is that it? I said, yeah, out, you know. Anyway, he was so good. I heard that little voice in the audition, a wandering minstrel, I said, Arthur, do you sing for a living? You have a beautiful voice. I said, for $11, would you sing?
Producers is now regarded by most people as a classic, but when it was first released, the critics weren't so nice to it, right? Critics kind of hit it hard.
Yeah. The New York Times said black college humor, described Zero Mostel as fat and unfunny, you know.
The first part was okay, but the last part hurt.
Yeah. But it was terrible that he, I mean, she hated it. Nobody liked it. Very few people liked it. Gene Shalit liked it. Gene Shalit had a great review. He said, no one will be seated in the last 88 minutes of the producers. They'll all be on the floor laughing their hearts out. I mean, it was wonderful. So since then, if Gene says, would you do the Today Show? I say, yes, of course, because I'm indebted. He was the only one who went overboard for the producers at the time. The Time magazine said half a miracle, half a mess. I mean, not bad. But most of it was like Renata Adler's review. Listen, one bad review, you never forget it. You can get 20 great reviews, but if you get one devastating review, you always agree with it. I've always agreed with Renata Adler, who was the critic for the Times.
You agree with it or just resent it?
I always agree. I say, you're right, I stink, I never should, I'm no good. You always do. In your heart of hearts, you always agree with the most negative reviews because you know you're a fake. You know you're a fraud. You know you're no good. You know what I mean? And they just point it out and you say, right, you caught me, you son of a bitch. You know? And it's true. I mean, one part of you is arrogant, but then there is the other pendulum swing that brings you, you know, down to your worst paranoid fears that you really were never meant to do it, that you're not talented, that you're not gifted, that you have no talent, you know.
So when you win for Best Screenplay for the producers, you're walking up there to grab that Oscar thinking, Renata Adler was right, and yes. I hope they forgot by now.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking that I pulled the wool over their eyes, that they don't know how dumb I really am, you know. That's part of it. And the other part is are they crazy? Why are they giving me this? What did I do? You know, I won it. There was Pontecorvo's picture, The Battle of Algiers. I mean, there were pictures like that. You know, it was the original screenplay. There's no category in the Academy Awards to take comedy. I mean, which is foolish because musicals and comedy should be in a separate category. How are you going to compete against? I mean, people dying. How are you going to compete against? I mean, look at all the pictures. They never nominated comedy. Awakenings. These people, they're stiff, and suddenly, if I did it, you know, they'd be doing. They'd be like this. Awakenings, right? Robert De Niro. Stiff, frozen. And in the movie, he's like this. Now, as Mel Brooks would do it. chasing the blues away, unhappy news away. I mean, that's the way the guy should wake up from one of those things. But they know they have him doing a. He does Jerry Lewis for half an hour. I mean, what the hell's going on with that bit? Watch stick. It's the Three Stooges again. Boom. There's such stuff going on. But they take it seriously. I thought it was hilarious.
You think the Stooges are funny, the Three Stooges?
Oh, the Three Stooges. Oh, were they funny.
I love the Stooges.
Bonk, bonk, bonk. Their timing was great. Their earnestness. Comedy is a juxtaposition, like we said, juxtaposition of texture. They are very earnest. What do you mean? Bang. No, they are very serious in their comedy. They never laugh. They never break up. They never enjoy it. You know, they leave that for the audience. They're consummate artists, comic artists. Their physical timing is absolutely perfection.
You know, Jay Leno always says one of the key differences between men and women, all men like the Three Stooges, no women do. You get three guys, one from Harvard, one from Cornell, the other from MIT. They're sitting around the television set. Mo hits Curly on the head with a 2x4. They're convulsed in laughter. Any three women walk in, aggregate IQ might be 110. They walk in and go, "It's not funny, it's just violent and stupid. Now cut it out."
You do that a little too good, you know. Geez, that voice, I got a little thrill there for a second. You know what I mean? Voice was very feminine, very good. No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Also, I like the Three Stooges a lot. I loved the Marx Brothers. I adored them because they married intellectuality, a brushstroke of wit, and philosophy with their great physical comedy. But the funniest brothers for me, were the Ritz brothers. Harry Ritz and Jimmy and Al, they thrilled me. And they came from Williamsburg. They came from Brooklyn. So, I mean, they were like gods of mine. Then I always thought maybe I'd end up doing something like that. And, I mean, I was very lucky that in Life Stinks, there was an opportunity to actually do a kind of Three Stooges, but we do it very earnestly. I mean, I am bereft of my fortune. And this goddamn delusional derelict thinks he's a billionaire. I know I'm a billionaire. So, I mean, I go crazy in that scene. I really feel it.
How did this 2,000-year-old man get started?
After the show of shows would wrap every Saturday night, we would go to a place on 54th Street on the east side called Danny's Hideaway. And there, Sid would host a party for the writers and some of the cast. Actually, anybody who wanted to join him. That'd be a group of about 20, 30 people at Danny's. And in those days, you were able to eat steak without worrying about a heart attack. So we'd order a steak, we'd order a vodka, we were able to drink. Those were the good old days when you weren't afraid to die. And often people would entertain for the king, for Sid, because he had just done a magnificent show. So the writers would do little skits and takeoffs of Sid, or the producers and stuff. And during this time, at one of the parties, Carl bought a tape recorder. Didn't know what to do with it. Walked around the room interviewing people, and some spontaneous mental combustion. Walked over to me and said, "Sir, we understand that you have been alive for 2,000 years, that you are the 2,000-year-old man. Is this true? How old are you?" And he actually began interviewing me, and I just went right into 2,000. I said, "Well, I'm not, I am, I'm not, yeah. October 16th, I'll be 2,000. And then he asked me a few questions, and I became this guy. I define comedy and tragedy as the 2,000-year-old man, as this ancient Jew. You want to know what the difference is?
Of course.
So would you ask me, you say, what is the difference between you?
Tell me, with all your years of experience, your vast powers of observation, what is the difference between comedy and tragedy?
What's it your business? No, just say it. I'm sorry, I couldn't.
What is the difference?
Go ahead. Let's try it again. No, we won't break up, guys.
What is the difference between comedy and tragedy?
Tragedy is if I'll cut my finger, we're talking a paper cut, this is tragedy. I'll go to Mount Sinai, I'll have a team of big surgeons look at it, and I'll worry all night, I'll take Tylenol, I'm going to be watching this tragedy. Comedy is if you walk into an open sewer and die. You know, what do I care? The finger, that's my finger. This is a tragedy.
George Segal and David Steinberg were both on this show within the past year or so, and they both made mention of being on a David Susskind show with you one Sunday night. I don't know how long ago it was.
Oh, yes.
And they both said, independently, that as funny as you've ever been any other place, this was your hottest night.
It was a good night. It was a good night. I was up.
The premise was how to be a good Jewish son, right?
Yes, the sons of Jewish mothers. And all the 5 Jewish boys who naturally had Jewish mothers, and stories of home, you know, like, I forget who told the story, maybe Dan Greenberg said that he doesn't remember ever seeing the furniture because it was always covered with plastic or something,
yeah.
You know. I said I don't remember ever seeing, there was a certain lamp, when we threw it out, it was the first time I saw it because they took away the cover, you know. And we all talked about the nuances, my mother putting papers down after she washed the floor on Friday night, and kind of warm and funny stuff.
What did your own mother have to say when you married Anne Bancroft?
Anne Bancroft is not Jewish. She's not a Jewish woman. She's Catholic.
Correct.
Yes, Catholic descent. I couldn't hear my mother when I told her.
Why?
Because her head was in the oven. She was putting on the gas. Who could hear with the gas jets and with, I want to die, I want to die. Actually, God bless her, she loved it. She loved Anne.
Did your mother revel in your show business success?
She never really saw anything. I mean, she liked to crawl. You know what I mean? The show of shows, she liked to crawl. The Mel Tolkien, Lucille Callan, Mel Brooks. Well, it was a good night. All right, let's go eat. You know, she turned it off. You know what I mean? She liked to see my name. She didn't quite, seriously, one of the heartaches of my life was that my mother never was really aware of the bizarre nature of my comedy. She thought that I shouldn't say such bad things, and I shouldn't do such bad, you know. She thought maybe I was in bad taste, you know. But she never really got my comedy. But she got my fame, you know, oh, Mel is coming to the condominium. Mel is coming to the, you know, Florida. You know, she would, Jews live for one thing, lobbies. They love lobbies. So they got to think for lobbies. They would go to hell rather than heaven. If heaven don't have a lobby in hell, they'll go to hell.
Better still, a lobby with a steam bath in it.
Right. They love a lobby. So my mother I would see her down in Florida. She'd put me in a play. I'd work the lobby of her building, you know. Hello, Mrs. Rose. And they're all, let's see, does the mic work? Yeah. They're all this big, you know, these Jewish ladies. So you'd have to, hello, Mrs. Rosenzweig, Mrs. T. How are you? Mrs. Feinstein, how are you, son of a bitch? It's so tiny. I mean, the Wizard of Oz, they would have been mayors and kings, you know. But in Florida, they were just another Jew. They were all this big. Yeah.
Mel Brooks directs and stars in Life Stinks, which is at the theaters right now. Tomorrow night, the final installment of this 4-night run with Mr. Brooks, and we talk about high anxiety and Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein.
Don't miss it, we're naked. Tell them.
Tell them
we are naked on the next show.
We are naked.
We are naked on the next show. I wear a steel cup because I'm afraid of my gonads, but he's totally naked.
Are you sure what we're getting into here?
A little disappointment, I'm afraid. I don't mind.
See you later.
See you.